fear is one of the biggest pains I think that people experience in a small law firm, is just constant fear of losing a client, fear of someone quitting. And honestly, it's really healthy to call this out and to call it what it is. Yeah. Most times people disguise fear as overwhelm. It's more vulnerable to say I'm scared than it is to say I'm overwhelmed.
Use of the word overwhelm and that as an excuse is because they're afraid to face the fears. I don't even know if they realize it's a fear. Like, it's not even like they're actively saying I'm overwhelmed instead of saying I'm afraid of this. It's because it's like so deep back in their head that it's like almost like subconscious and they don't want to face it. So it's easier just to say, well, I'm overwhelmed, and then they can avoid facing what they're actually afraid of.
We're talking about the science of going bigger. So This is the Law Firm Growth Acceleration Podcast. I have the one and only Brandon Bowers, COO of SMB Team. And today we're going to be unpacking the science of going bigger. More importantly, the pain points of running a small law firm and why running a small law firm is actually hurting you more than it's helping you. So we're going to look at this from multiple different angles. We're going to pretend that your law firm right now, whatever your current size is, what's the average law firm revenue? Do you know?
Without big law?
Yeah, without big law, it looks like small law firms is between $70,000 and $150,000 in annual revenue. So that's the range of the average law firm's revenue. How in the living hell can you survive running a law firm with expenses, making $70,000 to $150,000 a year?
That seems so small.
It's insane.
That's shockingly small.
Just go work for another law firm at that point.
It's probably not worth the hassle or the headache.
Or commit to building a freaking real business. And that's what we're talking about today, is the science of going bigger. The legal industry is brainwashed with this boutique mindset of like, oh, I can't go too big, or if I go too big, then, I'm going to piss off my clients, and I don't want to grow too fast. I want to get my systems in check. And I had this person at one of our workshops in Austin. I didn't tell you about this, but we had hundreds of our coaching clients, law firm owners, at our Austin, Texas quarterly coach workshop. And one of these clients came up to me, and BC, you were actually there for this whole experience, and comes up to me, and all this person had were reasons they couldn't grow their law firm, right? And I was happy to listen through all these things because it was great understand. She was, a newer client of ours and had a lot of reasons why this person can't grow their law firm. So I listened and listened and listened. I realized like halfway through, this is basically the narrative that, probably hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of attorneys have that just go through their head. And this one person just happened to be expressing what I think the entire national, maybe even international narrative is like, can't grow too fast. This needs to be boutique. It's just, and I want to kill this belief today, and I want to transition this with the why you must go bigger. What is going bigger? Why haven't you already gone bigger? And more importantly, how do you go bigger? And what problems get solved when you go bigger? So I have 10 major pitfalls, pain points that occur when someone doesn't go big, i.e. 10 pain points that occur when you're running a small, disorganized, average law firm. Average is the death of great. Good enough is the death of great. Everyone that runs a law firm that's surviving, that's your biggest threat. As soon as you get your survival needs met, that's your biggest threat.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm gonna run through these 10 things. You and I will comment on these 10 reasons, which I distilled down with ChatGPT and used some of the principles from our book, Law Firm Growth Accelerator, which if you haven't picked up, please make sure you read this. It's 525 pages of everything I've ever learned about business scaling geared for law firms. We've had 101 of our clients double their revenues in 12 months. And everything that's actually worked to do that is in this book. And we're going to talk about these 10 pain points of running a small firm and how you solve them when you run a bigger firm. Number one pain point. And it's funny because on the Bill Hauser podcast earlier today, we talked about this for the entire podcast. What do you think?
It's got to be about money.
Money, yes. So number one pain point of running a smaller firm, and it makes perfect sense that this is number one, is constant cash flow crises.
Yeah. That's any business, really. I mean,
it really is.
The law firm is not going to be any different.
And by the way, nothing's different about your business versus another service business. Oh, it's not like you're a special snowflake because you're a lawyer, right?
Principles are the same of business.
They're the same thing. Small businesses, not just lawyers, have cash flow issues, right? So every month is a juggling act to pay salaries, cover overhead. I'm reading from ChatGPT as the number one problem. And again, I went through 15 different searches that come to the statistical reasoning for these. So every month is a juggling act to pay salaries, cover overhead, keep the lights on. One missed invoice or late payment can spiral into panic and stress. If you're in contingency fee, that one case not settling this month could be make or break for you meeting payroll. It's not a good feeling.
No.
And it's completely different in a big law firm. But talk to me about this.
Well, the one nuance I will say, and this is again true for any business or industry, there could be different niches within that have harder cash flow.
Yep.
We do see a lot of law firm owners that see the big windfalls that PI can have at times, and that is attractive to them.
Yeah.
They're motivated by that, but it also is the toughest cash flow of all the practice areas.
Yeah.
And so you also have to be smart in what you choose to pursue, because unless you have reserves, from the start, perhaps you pursue a different practice area, at least in the beginning, until you get cash flows working.
Yeah.
But cash flow is the death of most businesses. So unless you're able to leverage debt, you have savings, you have to be able to have that money each and every month. And it's a scary, difficult thing. That's why everyone always has the trouble with hiring, because once you start hiring, it's going to hit your cash flow probably more than anything else, particularly in a service business. So yeah, and look, you could be profitable, but profit, as we know, is not the same as cash flow.
Yeah.
You have to have the money there when you need it.
I just looked up the number one reason that small businesses fail is lack of cash flow.
There you go.
That's the number one reason, okay? And that is 82% of small businesses fail due to cash flow problems. That's by the SBA.
Yep.
So cash flow. It should be literally like you should tattoo it on the exterior layer of your brain, meaning inside of your head and then also your forehead, because it's the number one thing. When you get to let's label a bigger law firm as 20 million plus per year. Life is completely different. You have cash flow predictability. You actually have statistics that tell you on average when case revenue will come in statistically on average. You're actually able to have someone in charge of data and finance like we do. You're able to have predictive analyses, a driver model like we run our business on, where every micro decimal point of every dollar that comes in and out of the company is already pre-planned 12 months in advance.
And hopefully you've built up a little bit of savings by that point, right? You have some cash reserves as well at that point.
100%. So financial security versus financial insecurity. So the fact that you are running a small law firm right now, you are creating cash flow issues for yourself. And it's because you're operating on too low of numbers. So you gotta 10x your top line revenue. And yes, that's gonna cost you some money. But I would rather voluntarily cost myself money in exchange for growth rather than involuntarily through abandonment of my business strategy end up at the end of the month with a cash flow crunch. I would rather have a cash flow crunch that was voluntary because I chose to invest in my business than a involuntary cash flow crunch any day of the week. Because either way, you're going to go through cash flow crunches.
Yeah.
The question is, do you want to go through a cash flow crunch out of mental abandonment of your law firm's business growth? Or do you want to go through a cash flow crunch because you were investing in growth so that you could build a legacy and an asset that works with or without you?
Agreed, and that's why knowing your numbers is so key.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and you don't have to know 50 numbers to start. Know like 5 numbers, right? Narrow it down to the 5 most important numbers for your firm.
Yeah.
Just know those and know where your cash is at all times in those early stages. And this is kind of a side note of this. I've seen too many people, including some past law firm clients, that, if you're newer to opening a business, if you're newer to having your law firm, you have to be willing to give up personal niceties and invest in your business.
Yeah.
Too many people want to live the same lifestyle, not realizing that you have to maybe take a step back at first to reinvest in your business to have that bigger business in the future. So if you're not willing to give that up, then you're going to run into cash flow crunches a lot more often.
Yeah. So that's number one, cash flow. You want cash flow problems that you cause. You don't want cash flow problems that your law firm causes as a result of abandonment. Number 2, big, huge pain point. This may be the biggest pain point that we're going to go through, which is saying something compared to cash flow.
I don't know what it could be.
Talent drain and high turnover. This is big, meaning when you are a small law firm, there is no reason for an A player to work with you. You can't pay them a lot of money. You can't give them amazing benefits. You can't afford, this ties into cash flow directly.
I was going to say,
right?
yeah.
You can't give them benefits. You can't pay them a lot of money. You can't give them a predictable sense of career growth. So you're basically handcuffed to every employee that you hire. If they are an A player, then you basically retain them out of fear of losing them rather than, abundance. I remember, when I first got started with SMB, like I was so happy when people didn't quit at the end of the year because that meant that I didn't have to take on their workload. Yeah. Because there was only like 3 or 4 people. And if one of them quit, I'm fucked. I'd have to take their workload, right? Now it's, we are high-fiving when strategically we get someone to quit that we really didn't want at the company because then we don't have all the, non-whatever employment law stuff. When they quit, you get less liability or whatever. So like my point in sharing that is like your relationship to people quitting completely is a 180-degree difference from when you're small to when you're big. When you're small, you're dependent on everyone. That is not freedom. When you're small, you can only afford maybe C plus to B player. Like you're lucky if you get a B player to join a small law firm. You don't even know what an A player is when you run a small business. Right. You think that first rock star you hired is a rock star. Okay. When you're doing $20 million a year in revenue and you can pay a $350,000 base or, give someone an equity plan or whatever, and it's an actual valuable business, you're going to attract someone way different than what you thought an A player was when you were paying someone $80,000 a year. Before you, I had a director of operations. I don't even know what he made, but it was, I don't know, it was probably like 70 or some thousand, maybe as high as like 80 or something. And it is crazy that with the talent of team that we have now, and this person was talented, but not for the role that we needed them to be. I thought that person was an A player, but I didn't have any reference experience to know whether they were an A player. Yeah. I had only hired 10 total people. So I had no reference. Now we've hired, 300 plus people, and we have net 140. We've let go of a lot of people because we actually adhere to our own standards as a company. And I think like we can't attract and we can't retain true A players. First, until you know what an actual A player is, but second, until you can get an A player to want to work for your business. And no A player is gonna want to work for a small law firm that isn't clearly going places.
Well, that's the thing. So when you first said this, number one, just to piggyback on what you're saying there, is the definition is going to change of what an A player is as your firm grows, right? So an A player in the 0 to 500,000 firm is different than the A player potentially in the 500 to 2 million, 2 million 5, et cetera. But this goes back to why the vision and creating a vivid vision is so important, right? Because the only way you can attract a higher level A player, so like somebody maybe from that mid tier of like a $2 to $5 million firm at your starting point, is if you have an amazing vivid vision and you can sell them on that future vision. If you can sell that person and you find the right, now it is hard to find that person. They're going to have to be willing to sacrifice and take less money, which I don't always like doing, as you know, in the recruiting process, because most people say they're willing to take less money and then 2 months in they're going to another job, right? Or they're trying to negotiate right away. So it is hard, but it is possible. But you're never going to get it without that vision. So it's why I think so many firms, do a disservice to themselves by not just taking a little bit of time to create that vision from the start.
And the best way, my buddy Roy Wiley, who you and I both know,
great guy.
He texted me. I think he listened to the first episode. Maybe he's listening right now. He listened to the first episode, texted me, and then he said, I said something about, he was like, love the first episode. And I replied back and I was like, thanks. It's the worst it'll ever be or something like that. Like, it wasn't perfect, but we just did it anyway. No preparation, one take. And then I told him actionary. I want to be an actionary, not a visionary. And that's something that him and I very much align on, is the importance of being an actionary, not a visionary. And that, the reason I call that out regarding talent is because the best way to depict that your vision is real is by actually growing your law firm through action, right? Because there's plenty of people with big visions that don't materialize, right? So, like, I would rather have someone go, oh, hell yeah, this law firm's going places. I can't believe how fast this law firm grew in the last year. So then when you hear about their vision, you go, oh, shit, I believe this. Like, this seems legit because of the evidence of how fast they're currently growing.
Absolutely.
So I think talent is the biggest, is probably, it's an unknown, you don't know what you don't know. You don't know how much better your talent situation is going to be until you build a bigger business. So
agreed.
So that's number 2. So cash flow, talent, which leads to turnover, and you're unable to recruit A players. So the commitment and the solve to that is to go freaking big and start investing in your law firm and make a splash in your market. Number 3. What do you think number 3 is?
I have no clue. What was the title again? It's What's Holding You Back?
Yeah, so these are the 10 biggest pains of running a small law firm.
Oh, pains of running a small law firm.
When you don't have a lot of clients coming in, you have to work with low-paying, demanding, a-hole clients.
Yeah, interesting.
So bad clients, right? So if you only had, like, if your law firm only has 3 phone calls coming in a month, and those 3 phone calls wave a check in front of you and say, hey, you want my money? You're more likely to go and grab it, right? So when you have 3,000 leads coming in a month, you're able to just pick the 15 to 20 ones that are the highest money, lowest headache clients. You can't do that when you're small.
No. And we've all been there, right? And it's you can listen to anyone who's been in business for themselves or done sales or anything else, and they will always tell you the lowest paying clients, the ones who look for the deals and want to pay, half price all the time, they're usually the biggest pain in the butt. And they suck up more of your time. They're actually way more costly. You generally don't make money on those clients. So, maybe in the beginning you take a few of them just to get a little bit of money in the door, but your goal should be to go right through to that higher revenue target so that you can start to pick and choose.
Same thing happens with contingency fee is, you get 3 extremely bad car accident cases with, iffy liability, not real damages, more likely to pursue them when you don't have any other leads coming in. And it could waste a ton of time. When you're in a big law firm, you're not only, big law firms typically come with a reputation. There's a reason law firms get big, is because typically a reputation backs the law firm in some way. Whether that reputation is spread through great marketing or a mixture of great marketing and great results. The ability to set specific parameters as to what cases you accept as a business owner is one of the most liberating things ever. By the way, you can't create a scalable business model serving 15 different types of clients.
Right.
It's almost impossible to do that unless you're like a Picasso of operational design. I mean, which is very rare for a law firm owner to be. Like, you're better off criminal defense. Okay, that seems like a niche. By the way, first of all, like, the ability to niche your law firm is probably the fastest way to scale your law firm. The only way you can niche your law firm is if you get enough demand of people that want to hire you within that niche, right?
Yeah.
So I can say, oh, my niche is criminal defense, but that's not actually a niche. There's like multiple niches. There's high-end, like murder type cases, average fee per case of $50,000. There's your mid-level kind of like drug charges, like a little bit more complex drug charges. You have like the federal side. Then you have your rinse and repeat, like DUIs, traffic tickets, like our buddy Derek, has created a very scalable model. Derek Martin, a client of ours. And it's because he's niched down, and he has so many leads coming in those areas where he's able to create a scalable practice. And when you look at these mom and pop shop practices that rely on word of mouth, like, people hang their hat on this, I get all word of mouth, 80% referral, 90% close rate. That is literally the cancer of a scalable business. If you rely on disorganized referrals, then you're unconsciously going to build your law firm based on whatever the hell ends up coming in through your referral sources.
Yeah, and that's how, like in my hometown, there's a lot of just general practice firms, right? They're small. They kind of do a little bit of everything. It's a lot of word of mouth. But the landscape now with digital marketing, for law firms and any other business, it's more important now to niche down in the beginning because it's a lot more cost effective. Like you said earlier, you can drill in on one, niche that will drive leads, become known for it. You can ramp up. If you want to get into many practice areas, many niches of practice areas, it's only possible when you get large. Right? So the reason why we look at big law, there are some firms that you look at their practice areas and it's, 100 different practice area with niches. And so they're able to do that because they have the systems and operations, because they have the money to pay the people to do it and invest in the technology and the software. But you can't do that when you're a small firm.
Yeah, 100%. So when you build a big firm, you can pick and choose the clients that you get. And you can scale your firm around that. Number 4, big problem for small firms is the owner is overwhelmed with administrative tasks, right?
See it all the time. Yeah.
This is pretty simple. Yeah. Simple to understand. If you have one employee, almost every administrative task is going to fall on your plate. If you have 100 employees, almost no administrative task is going to fall on your plate, right? So this ultimately comes down to, how much time do you want to spend on non-value producing activities, right? Do you want to spend 50% of your time on client billing, scheduling? Do you want to spend 50% of your time on managing files or admin? Or would you rather spend 100% of your time on revenue producing activities, even if part of that is high value legal work, right? Like high value negotiations, it doesn't mean you have to give up all the legal work, but there's an opportunity cost to every minute a law firm owner spends on a non-revenue producing, low value task And it's almost impossible to get those tasks off of the owner's plate unless the firm is at a financial state where it can afford a fortress of people to handle all of that. Right?
Yeah, and I think it's really just a decision, right? Like, most people just don't make the decision. I mean, I remember you in the past, like, you did it, and then I've done it in different times where it's like, okay, I'm deciding from today on, I don't do this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start to do those things and start to, because it's, it goes back to that saying around like acting like what you want to become, essentially. But if you start to act, you have a phrase around this too. I forget how you word it, but you got to start acting like that big business owner, right? That big law firm owner. If you start acting like a law firm that is a $2 million law firm, you're going to start getting things off your plate. You're going to find ways to make it happen. But that's a decision you have to make.
Mm-hmm. So what does an apple have to do in order to be an apple?
What is an apple tree? Is that what is that the phrase you do?
That's like the saying, right?
Just be an apple tree.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something like that. It's like, what does an apple have to do in order to be an apple? It has to be born by an apple tree or something like that.
Well, and even like in our framework of,
But a baby giraffe will never come out of an elephant.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So you don't get what you want, you get what you are.
Yep.
That's the whole concept.
Yep.
So, I mean, that's why if you're overwhelmed with low value tasks, you probably got too small of a law firm. But if you have a big law firm and you're overwhelmed with administrative tasks, that's a micromanagement problem.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, I don't think you or I have problems with that. I think we put trust in people, but it's a big problem. I think.
Well, that goes back to I wrote notes when you were saying earlier about I forget what you said at the beginning of this podcast, something about people not growing. And one thing I think to call out that a lot of law firm owners, a lot of lawyers are high detail oriented, right? And with that, when you do any behavioral trait studies or assessments, predictive index or Colby disc, any of them culture index, you'll learn about your traits and your behaviors and kind of what you're prone to. Well, a lot of lawyers tend to be detail oriented, which kind of makes sense for the work that it does. For those who are detail oriented, who want to then become law firm owners, they have to be able to overcome their natural tendencies, right? And we know with behavioral traits, not everybody can. But when you're locked on the details, you want everything to be perfect. And that's usually what holds back law firm owners and keeps them small. And it ties into what you're saying right there with the delegation and giving things off and micromanaging, is because, again, they're so worried about being perfect. Mm-hmm. They're unwilling to just take a chance and take that risk. Mm-hmm. And if you're going to be a law firm owner, you have to take risk at times.
100%.
And otherwise, you're going to be in that category you mentioned earlier, the $70,000 to $150,000. And if you can't get over that perfectionism, then you need to go work for somebody and just be a great attorney.
And by the way, you can make a ton of money doing that.
Yeah, way more than what you're making as that law firm owner at that size.
Yeah. So I think the next one comes down to, so number 5 is constant firefighting without real progress, right? So this is more of like the reactionary epidemic addiction of most business owners. Because I think what I had a mentor of mine once say that the exact things that get you to level 1 of success do not get you to level 2. Mm-hmm. There's intangibles and tacticals, right? So there's intangibles, which are character and psychological things you did to become successful. And then there's tactical, actual action item things that you did to be successful. The tactical things completely change.
Yeah. Some
of the psychological things remain the same, but at least 50% of both of them have to be replaced, right? So let's talk about firefighting. Urgent emails, client crisis, deadline approaching. There's unlimited things that can appear as short-term, immediate. It's that whole urgent and important scale, right? Oftentimes the things that are most important aren't the most urgent. You are overwhelmed as a small business owner with urgent, right? especially a super small business owner,
Yeah.
it's all urgent. When you're only focused on urgent, it's really hard to focus on the important, right? It's very simple. What's that called? I forget.
With the scaling
Eisenhower matrix. I think
I
that's
don't
what
remember
it's
what
called.
it's called. I don't remember.
But that is like the ultimate thief of your dreams is being reactionary constantly because you have no time to design your future.
Yeah, and it that goes back to discipline with calendar. So one of the things that really changed the game for me, because to get out of the reactionary, you have to devote time to solve root causes and to create solutions for the future that are going to prevent all of these fires in the first place, right?
Yep.
And so, yes, it may be hard when you're small and you don't have a big team that can take on things, but you have to understand how you function, how you work, what's best for you. I know my brain is the best early in the morning. I get very creative. I have lots of ideas. I've now restructured my calendar so that in the beginning of the morning, like I use that first hour essentially to do the highest value things and just think and have ideas. And I can, if there's a big problem I've been thinking about or an opportunity, I can work on that a little bit on my own without anybody else. Just let my creative juices flow.
Yep.
But the biggest thing that's helped that is being disciplined enough to not check my email.
Yeah.
In the early morning.
Pulls you in.
I was guilty always my whole career of as soon as I wake up, first thing I did is pulled open my phone or my laptop and started checking email. And if there's a client situation or something issue, my brain is now distracted. I'm in now, defensive mode. I'm reacting to this and my day's, completely off track.
Why? Let me ask you a question about myself in terms of your observations of how and why am I never accessible? How have I made myself not the person that people come to when there's a fire? Because most times they come to you or now even other people on the team. But what was that transition like? Because I feel like everyone listening can benefit from how I eliminated myself from firefighting. Like what were some of the first experiences you had with me where it was like, hey, Bill does not want to be interrupted and he wants you to solve this on your own. Where's like some of the first times you saw evidence of me living that?
I mean, early on, I think you made it clear when I joined that, you wanted to be able to focus on vision and stop firefighting day to day, right? So I just remember, because for a while our offices, we still are back to back at the old location, and then we eventually shared an office for a while.
Did we?
Yeah, remember you came in, you hijacked half my office for a while, and you're like, what if we just
in what the one before this?
Yeah, the last one,
the one that just got demolished.
Yes, that one.
Which office? The one
because you were in the far left corner.
The one that we
right
broke through the wall.
I think so. Yeah.
Was it the left or right side of that?
Of our two offices?
There was like a mini little sink.
The mini sink. Yeah. Yes, over there. So I was on the right.
So we were sharing that?
For a little bit.
It's all a blur.
But you kind of just took over.
That's so funny. I don't even
But I think when you were on the left side still, I just remember people coming in and they're like, hey, Bill, we got to, and you're like, that's Brandon. So you have basically just made it a conscious decision that I'm not going to put myself in these situations anymore because I need to focus on other things.
I was watching this thing from Jordan Peterson about like agreeableness. And he did this psychoanalysis of multiple successful people. I forget what it was. And he basically said that very successful people have this trait where they don't need to be agreeable. Like there are times where they will put their foot down even if it is perceived as abrasive.
Yeah.
Right? How would you, because I've always had that in me where I had no problem telling you when you first joined SMB Team, I was like, don't bring fires to me.
Yep.
How did you perceive that? Did you perceive me as being disrespectful in some ways? And you can be open about it if I was. How did you perceive me being? Because I feel like most people would be uncomfortable to tell their team, don't bring fires to me.
Yeah, no, I didn't think it was like, I just saw you as being assertive. Now, you're somebody who'll come in the morning, joke around, be goofy and stuff. But then like once you lock into your morning routine as well. And if you're like deep in thought and somebody comes in and tries to interrupt you and you're like, I can't deal with it right now. Like you'll be very direct and maybe to the point where people almost feel like you were a little bit rude about it or something.
Yeah.
But I think everyone just knows you well enough to think or to understand that that's not you being rude. That's just, I'm locked in. I can't be unfocused because I've got to focus on this right now. And I'm sure BC can attest to this as well.
I guess rude is the word. Yeah.
So, if somebody who doesn't know you.
BC, that's how. Yeah, that's just who I am. Yeah, rude.
If somebody doesn't know you, they would think it's brash or a little bit rude. But we just understand like you like to get focused in that zone.
Offensively impolite or ill-mannered.
That can apply. But I think it's important. It's okay to be like that. I mean, it's you know what you want, you know what you got to do. You got to lock in your time.
Yeah.
And I think too many people. So here's the thing: we actually have seen this. Remember, a lot of people were guilty of this when we were smaller and growing, and when you have team members who are very team oriented and a good cultural fit. One of the downsides of that is you can get team members who are overly willing to help everybody else to the point that it's a detriment to their own work or their own self-preservation of time and
I think you had a lot of problems with that.
I had problems at the beginning because
I would actually talk to you about that during our one-on-ones and say like you have to stop hopping in and helping people. That was a big struggle for me.
Well, because I think I always kind of like I think my culture index or one of the behavioral traits will say like I like being that hero, right? And so I kind of feel like I was being brought in to kind of help in that situation where there was a lot of things in flux and some things that needed solved from an operational standpoint. So I wanted to be a part of that and help that. But, I would basically just spread myself too thin too often, right? And it was always kind of like, well, I'll just figure out time. I'll find time. I'll just work harder. I'll work longer, whatever I need to do to get it done.
I just had a thought. It's a forcing function thought that problems per unit of time. Let's say problems per day, right? If one person has 5 problems per day, it's conceivable that one person could solve all 5 of those problems in a day. It's only 5 problems. If the other person has 38 problems per day because their business is bigger, they have more things going on, it's impossible to solve 38 problems in one day. It's a lot harder to, right? So maybe one of the ways to eliminate yourself from firefighting and putting out fires constantly is to just have more problems. It's a counterintuitive way to think about it. It's just the reason you're able to put out all these fires is because you're not having that many fires because you only have 2 employees. Yeah. So whatever you think firefighting is on the context of 3 people and a much smaller client load than someone with 5,000 clients. Yeah. So that could be a counterintuitive way. You want less problems, get more problems. Yeah. Because when you get more problems, you're going to have to delegate. Yeah. It does. Someone else has to handle the problems.
Well, yeah. And that was the thing is I think when I came on board, we had a lot of younger, less experienced managers. And so I think in the beginning, I did a lot more with them. And, so, maybe at the beginning for them, but I tried to do mostly just with. But we scaled so fast that I had to start delegating, pretty quickly before they were fully proven. Just because, like you were saying, I couldn't continue to help everybody all the time because I was just stuck in meetings all day long, helping to solve problems for everybody. So we kind of had to, force those individuals to take that leap. And luckily, we just had really talented people that succeeded and were able to do that. So
true. So the next one I have here is lack of freedom. Now, this is there's a little bit of like a multi-pronged approach to lack of freedom. Obviously, if you're putting out fires all day, you are going to have less freedom over where you spend your time throughout your day. Yeah. Okay, that's simple to understand. However, here's the challenge. Let's say you actually only work 8 hours a day, which would be very rare for an attorney. I mean, it's almost never have I seen someone who's struggling running a smaller firm that's working 8 hours a day.
Yeah, I'd agree.
It's usually a very inverse correlation, which this goes against the belief of if I work hard, I'll make more money. Well, a lot of lawyers are working really hard and they're not making more money, right? So there comes a point where we have to work smart while continuing to work your eyeballs out. But lack of freedom also can apply outside of the workday.
Sure. Yeah.
You could be putting out fires and in theory work 8 hours a day and still have freedom outside of that. You could have a firefighting persona, right? And still have freedom outside of it if the firm was operating well on weekends without your involvement, nights without your involvement, mornings without your involvement.
Right.
You could take vacations and someone else can put out fires. I think that freedom is typically a reflection of the health of your business, which is much bigger than just firefighting. It's like we always say a business is a commercial, profitable enterprise that works without you. Actually, we've edited it to a business, technically, is a commercial, profitable enterprise that works with or without you. Because it should still work with you, and you should be able to work on whatever the hell you want to work on.
You get to choose it.
Right? You should. That's it. It's choice. That's freedom. I can choose to work on the types of cases I want, and the business doesn't break. I can also choose to be MIA for 4 months or sell the business, and it doesn't break. But freedom, I look at. I think you just nailed it. It's really freedom of choice. In all aspects. And how could you have freedom of choice if you're making, even less than $1 million a year in your business? I mean, your business is probably doing what, $500,000, your suit business, when you sold it?
At our height, it was 1.5, 2.5, something like that. It was a little. It was low 7 figures.
Yeah.
But when it was just, I started with the business partner, but like once he left, if it was just my sales, I mean, it was much harder when I was doing everything because at one point it was just me.
Yeah.
When he decided to go to another industry, it was just me. So I would, get up early in the morning. I would do all the client work.
Early?
Well, I would often get up at 6 to 7 because my first meetings were at 9. But I was often going to bed at midnight 1 and then waking up at 2 or 3 because the factories would be emailing me. So I had to also interact with the factories. Sometimes there were orders that we had issues on. So I wasn't sleeping a lot.
Jeez.
And then I'm doing appointments all day long. Once I scaled the business, once you get past $1 million, $1.5 million mark, you have other people selling. So I'm not now relying on all my own production for revenue. I have team members selling that I'm also making money off of. Then I hired an assistant. So now she's doing all the other order taking, interaction with the factories and whatnot. So it freed up. And now I had choice to say, okay, do I want to work on future things? Do I want to sell more clients and just make pockets more money?
Yep.
What do I want to do? And it was that freedom of choice that was the beauty of it.
Crazy. Yeah, I think the we always, in our book, we talk about there's only 3 outcomes that someone can want: autopilot and profit from their law firm. Autopilot, profit, scale and dominate, or sell. Only 3 ultimate outcomes. Autopilot profit means I want the firm to run itself and I want to receive a cash dividend as a result of that. Sell means obviously I want to receive a check for my law firm. And law firms that autopilot and profit typically sell for more, so these go hand in hand. And scale and dominate is I want to put the lights out on my competitors. I want to be number 1 in my market. I want to scale my gross revenues as high as possible, right? And then optimize later. Within those 3, there's different psychological profiles that go behind each of those 3 outcomes that a law firm owner can have. Psychological profile 1, autopilot and profit, is typically someone who's burnt out and doesn't have freedom from their firm. So therefore they want the firm to autopilot, to run a little bit more on itself. And they're also, when they're burned out, they're probably not making as much money as they want. So they also want to profit while the firm's running itself. So that profile is more around freedom and a little bit of financial security. That's profile number 1, psychologically, the law firm owner behind that goal. Number 2, sell is typically someone who either wants out of the legal business or wants to retire. A little bit different. They probably do want freedom, but their method to freedom is by selling their law firm. It's a little bit different, right? And then the third is scale and dominate. Scale and dominate is typically someone who's on the come up, wants to go through a period of growth. And typically this mindset is similar to the mindset that I'm in right now, where it's like I'm not really focused on work-life balance or, profit or, I'm focused on the business intrinsic fundamentals of the business, but not for a purpose of personal outcome. I'm doing it because I love the game, right? And I love that SMB team has been built in such a way where I can be a freaking attack animal and continue pushing innovation, pushing research and development so our clients continually get better results, and go on creative research projects to optimize stuff that we're doing for clients. That to me is freedom. Now, most people wouldn't define that as their version of freedom. Their version of freedom is, I want to sit on a beach or go on 2-month vacations. My version of freedom is I want to be able to be creative and do really high impact, high value things. In my first 3 years, I wasn't able to do high impact, high value things. Right. I didn't have that freedom because I was constantly putting out fires. So freedom is often misunderstood by law firm owners as, I don't know, whatever the hell they think, constant vacations or just,
Sure.
Which is a form of freedom if that's what you want.
And it does go back to defining it. Like when, because, my business was like, we went up, we went down. We had some people at our height, like I said, we were at that level, but I wish I'd have sold it then. We sold it when I was much smaller afterwards when we, because that industry, unfortunately, was a low barrier to entry. So people could go out and start their own companies pretty easily. So that's what ended up happening. And so then at the end, it was like my assistant and myself. So I had a ton of freedom in one sense.
Yep.
I mean, I could do whatever I wanted all day long. It was pretty easy going. It's a high profit business. So I was making plenty of money, and I didn't have to worry about employing a lot of people and managing people day to day. So it was pretty easy. Yeah. But it wasn't what I wanted. And I felt trapped. I wanted out of Chicago. You know what I mean? So it was like me then selling and joining another firm that was bigger, even though it was, you would think, giving up freedom because now I don't have my own business anymore. It provided me freedom because now I was doing the things I wanted to do. I didn't want to sell anymore. I didn't want to sell every day. I wanted to work on big, big problems. I wanted to really solve things. And I knew if I invested in my own business there, then I was going to get trapped forever. And I didn't want to do that. So that was my opportunity. So it really is important to define what freedom is first.
Interesting. Yeah, I think everyone has a different version of it. And also, I think another very important concept is sometimes the things that at one point gave you energy can burn you out.
For sure. Yeah.
Like, for example, sales. Like I
used to get a ton of energy from
it. Like you were also really good. Like there was a point where time stopped. Yep. It was amazing. And then it started becoming dreadful.
Yeah. Same.
But but that's just because I am an entrepreneur. That's just who I am. But if I didn't feel that, then I would have become the best salesperson I could have possibly become. I would have just committed to that, but my internal clock was saying I had to do something on my own.
Yeah.
Number 7 is really fear. Fear is one of the biggest pains I think that people experience in a small law firm. Is just constant fear. Fear of losing a client, fear of, we can apply it to the talent thing, fear of someone quitting, fear everywhere. Fear of, what if if I stop working, the firm's, it's constant fear. And honestly, it's really healthy to call this out and to call it what it is. It's actually, most times people disguise overwhelm as fear. I'm sorry, opposite. Yeah. Most times people disguise fear as overwhelm.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's more vulnerable to say I'm scared than it is to say I'm overwhelmed. Therefore, most people default to say I'm overwhelmed, I'm burned out. No, you probably just got a little bit too much of the stress hormones releasing into your brain because you don't have cash flow predictability, you don't have talent predictability, you don't have client predictability. So this is really a culmination of all the scarcities that we already went through is results in fear.
I think the use of the word overwhelm and that as an excuse is because they're afraid to face the fears.
Yeah.
Like I don't even know if they realize it's a fear. Like it's not even like they're actively saying I'm overwhelmed instead of saying I'm afraid of this. It's because it's like so deep back in their head that it's like almost like subconscious and they don't want to face it. So it's easier just to say, well, I'm overwhelmed. And then they can avoid facing what they're actually afraid of.
Yeah. And this is one of the best books I ever read is called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. It's worth doing a speed reading of this book because like it's very counterintuitive that typically the things that we fear are the things that we should precisely be doing.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that typically, because human beings, the reason why we always are fighting against reactionary impulse is because that is 10,000 years of our DNA, Ice Age DNA, survival DNA before modern industrial society happened. We actually were pretty reactionary. Now, we are the most proactive of all other species of anything else on planet Earth. So we were as proactive as you could possibly be, hence our cerebral cortex, which allows us to do pre-planned thinking and logic, right? And even, parts of self-awareness, which other animals and species don't have. But ultimately, it was all rooted in reactionary, right? Hungry, need to eat. Threat, need to fight, flight, or flee, or whatever. Hide. Yeah, whatever. The same thing.
I don't know what the other one is.
Yeah. But the point is that we have reactionary genes that we have to fight against. And now, fear still exists. The question is, what does it get applied to, right? Fear of inadequacy is almost as bad of a fear as getting chased by a lion in the past.
Yeah.
It probably has a worse impact. I actually think getting chased by a lion makes you younger.
The exercise?
Probably. The exercise, the exhilaration, a little bit of positive hormones would get released in a situation like that. Survival alert, must take action right now. I think getting chased by a lion, that kind of fear makes you younger.
Well, but going back to like just natural instincts of the species, right? The fight or flight mode.
Yep.
That's what happens in any fear. And like you were saying, now it's just applied to different things. Before it was in caveman days, you're getting attacked by an animal. It's fight or flight. Now it's, do you face the fear of hiring your first hire?
Yep.
Are you going to charge forward or are you going to retreat and say, I'll just keep doing this. I'll struggle every day.
Yep.
And a lot of people just get paralyzed by that anxiety of facing those fears.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why I think people would be much better off. I think the worst fears are the ones unaddressed and that you're unaware of. Those are the worst fears because those are the fears that drive your life. Those are the fears that create this silent voice in the back of your head that you're not even aware of what I can't do and why I'm trapped. And, well, if I don't respond to this client's email right now and save the client, I'm going to miss out on $50,000 in revenue. We don't really process these fears, but our response system to fear is to take a immediate action within our current paradigm. Our response to fear is typically not to adopt a new paradigm and to say, hey, what would the future me do when I'm at 10 times the revenue? Because that goes right against your amygdala response to that fear release.
Yeah. And I think, I've set time on my calendar every Friday, just 30 minutes for self-reflection, looking over the course of the week on things I've, improved on, haven't improved on yet. I have, like a working list. But I think even the immediate reflection is even better because let's say you keep avoiding doing a certain task.
Yep.
Or you are inclined to go check your email to see if anything's there.
Yep.
If you can develop a habit of stopping yourselves in those moments and saying, what do I fear about doing this thing that I need to be doing for my firm, but I haven't done? What is holding me back? Or what is making me want to jump into my email and solve this as opposed to working on bigger picture things? It'll force you to face those fears, right? But you have to develop that habit, and it's hard to do. But just put it in your head, keep reminding yourself every day you're going to keep doing that, and eventually you start catching yourself. And that's when you start facing, to your point of, addressing them.
And fear is all what do I want to avoid? And abundance is what do I want?
Right.
And you remove the word avoid, right?
Exactly.
And so I think when you're running a bigger firm or you've made the commitment to go bigger, you're operating from abundance. All right, number 8. No name brand. That's big, right? When you are a smaller firm, you're a no name. Now you may have some good local kind of long-term reputation build up, but on a big scale, nobody knows who you are, right? How would you like to go introduce yourself at a dinner party and say, hey, I'm Johnny, I'm a no-name brand? Who the hell would ever want that, right?
Yeah.
Brand, you don't get to reap any of the rewards of having a brand. There are so many, like, what are the wonders of the world? There's like eight wonders of the world, right?
I think so, yeah. 8 wonders.
The ninth wonder of the world, I think Albert Einstein said, was compound interest. The 10th wonder of the world would be the mysterious things that happen when you have a brand, right? I mean, it is freaking amazing when you've invested in a brand that people know. I mean, partnership opportunities arise from it that you would never imagine. People want to partner with you, like we did with Attorney Assistant and Ethan. The other thing that we're discussing right now, which I won't mention.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I was worried that was coming out.
We get so many rewards of having invested in a bigger brand. From a talent perspective, people who literally reach out to us who are like top employees at competitors of ours saying, hey, they're moving too slow here. I want to work with you. Like client stuff where people like have watched all your stuff and then just all of a sudden call you one day and sign up for a $400,000 contract with us. Like it is mysterious how well it works. And it pains me that small law firm owners will never get to benefit from the mysteries of a brand.
Yeah, and I think we have clients that have capitalized on social media to kind of create the image that they have this bigger brand, right? Because you can kind of create that in the social media world, because if you are committed to driving those posts every day and you're creating value and they're getting watched and they're getting traction, all of a sudden you get seen, even if you're not very large. But I would bet you if you asked those clients, and we know who they are, the value they got from having a quote unquote big brand, even though they weren't yet, it's tremendous. So they saw that benefit of that big brand, and now as they actually start bringing in the revenues and reaping the rewards of that, they're going to get even bigger and bigger and bigger.
And that's why it comes back to cash flow, right? In order to invest in things that are brand related, you have to be okay with not getting immediate returns. And most people can't afford to do that when they're small. So therefore it's a moat. It's a big competitive moat. All right. Second to last is, this is a little edgy. Your clients suffer. Your clients suffer. Now, this is completely counterintuitive to the original. I can see the
arguments that people would be making,
Well, if I stay small, then I can keep it boutique. I can keep my hand on the pulse of everything. I can over-deliver for my clients. Bull crap, okay? If you get sick tomorrow, your clients will suffer. You're assuming everything just hums along smoothly.
Perfect every day.
No problem happens in your personal life. No problem happens with any of your existing cases that takes your attention away from one of the other cases you're working on. Bottom line, your clients will suffer if you stay small. You won't have the resources of a competitor that has, an HR team, a product improvement team to improve your legal service. When's the last time you thought about how you're going to improve your legal services for your clients instead of just being reactionary? Like, you just have you're playing a whole different game when you're running a big law firm versus a small law firm in terms of how you can innovate around client results and client service.
And the virtuous thing that most of the law firm owners have is they want to help people, right?
Yeah.
So that's an admirable trait of something they want to do. But it's a mistake to think, well, I'm the only one that can deliver that type of service.
Yep.
Or a lot of times it's the fear that, well, my clients, now as I build this brand and get to be known as the person, they only think that I can be the one to deliver that. They're only going to want me.
Yep.
And one of our clients in our last Master Circle event at our last workshop, talked about this and said how they see it differently. They see it as they're able to help way more clients by growing and scaling their firm. And that their argument as to why clients, how they still get them is they're the ones setting the training. To your point of like the delivery.
Yep.
This law firm owner's focus now is making sure that every lawyer in their firm is trained the proper way to deliver the service and quality of results that she would have done. So now she's able to multiply. We talked about this earlier about you're multiplying through that leadership and making sure now you have 20 lawyers that can produce the same quality results for clients that you could have.
Yep. So true. And this is a big counterintuitive one.
Yeah.
And last but not least is lack of innovation, which kind of ties into the client suffering thing. But like, it's impossible to innovate when you are running a small law firm.
Yeah.
How are
There's
you
no
going to
time.
innovate? I mean, it's all like panic, emergency, real-time problem solving. Innovation is asking big, tough questions that many people have not answered before about how to improve your legal production system, the methods through which you get clients great results, and quite frankly, the reason why most of the legal industry is still in the Stone Age. I mean, there's clients still in 2024 sign up with us that have we have a wide range of clients now of people just getting started to multi-8-figure law firms. It's some people still every now and then will join us and have paper files for everything.
It's crazy.
That is just a reflection of the industry in so many ways of how behind the legal industry is. And to change that, the CEO, the visionary, the owner of the law firm has to focus on innovation.
Yeah.
And all innovation starts with a question on how you can do things better, faster, cheaper to produce a better outcome for your end user. If you don't spend any time on that, you're not going to improve your legal services. You're not going to improve your client service systems. You can't innovate.
And I think the small thinking, again, going back to lawyers being detail oriented, is this is what you mentioned earlier, was about growing and breaking, breaking things, right? And I think oftentimes lawyers as business owners are afraid to break things because they feel like it's going to be detrimental to their law firm or the service to the clients and whatnot. And so they're maybe afraid to take some of these chances on innovation or whatever as they scale and grow. But again, if you step back, step out of the lawyer seat, step into the CEO seat, you have to understand that it's okay for things to break because the end result is going to be much greater for more people.
100%.
So you're going to be able to serve more people in a better way with better results if you devote time towards that and take some chances.
And when you have more bodies, it's going to inevitably produce more innovation.
Absolutely.
Like we have, just think of our head of PPC, head of social, head of SEO, like put all these people in a room, ask them questions about how we can improve the way that we're working or producing results for our clients. I'm going to get way better answers than if it's just Bill in a meditative pose guessing what I think is going to produce better results.
All of our newest changes in technology on the paid side is a result of that. It didn't come from us. It came from them.
Yeah. So those are some of the biggest pains of running a small law firm. And the solution, the battle cry, the reason that we did this episode today is to jolt you, to give you an electrical shock to go bigger. Let this episode today be the reason that you go bigger, that you make the declaration that you are going to go bigger. And in order to go bigger, a decision has to be made on your part. A decision has to be made right now that your law firm is going to be 5, 10, 20, 30 times its current size. And you're going to do it because it's going to produce better results for your clients. You're going to do it because it's going to give you a brand that you love. It's going to eliminate those fears. It's going to give you freedom. Your clients are going to get way, 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 way better results. You're going to be able to solve your cash flow problems. You're going to be able to solve your talent problems. I mean, basically every problem you have, going bigger can solve. But right now, you can't see that until you experience it. So my invitation to you is to experience it. Take some risk. Go a little bit bigger. Think a little bit bigger. Take a little bit more action than you did last week. Do something that the $40 million CEO you would do. Try it out. Guarantee it won't kill you. All right. Stay great. Keep it snazzy. And keep flexing in the mirror 24/7, 365. Peace out.